I'm Deborah Uroda for It's Your Money, and we have Charles Spence with Maynes Bradford Shipps Sheftel in the studio today. We're going to talk about trusts. What are trusts?
Well, a trust is basically an arrangement that a person that's creating a trust has with the trustee, who essentially manages things on behalf of a beneficiary. And there are several forms of trust, but basically you have a revocable living trust or testamentary trust, one of which, a revocable living trust, you actually create during your lifetime. The agreement exists. You can actually transfer assets into the trust. Testamentary trust is contained within the terms of your will. So that doesn't actually exist while you're alive. It becomes operative once you pass away. There's some advantages, perhaps, and disadvantages to each.
And why would you do a trust? I mean, for example, I have a stepson who has cerebral palsy, and we created a trust, or my husband created the trust for him, but I really don't understand how that works. How does that thing work?
There are a large number of reasons why you would want to create a trust. I mean, in the past, it's been tax planning, federal estate tax planning. That has changed somewhat. Income tax planning, there may be some advantages to that depending on what you're wanting to do. Asset protection, planning for long-term care, Medicaid, perhaps supplemental needs trusts, as you mentioned, for your situation. So it just depends on the particular circumstances, but they can become advantageous depending on what you're trying to do. I would say that the revocable living trust is generally my preference because what happens is that you create that trust during your lifetime and you have the ability to fund it, retitle your assets into it. And where that becomes important and what we're seeing more and more is lifetime incapacity issues. We're all living longer. We're facing health issues perhaps more than we have in the past at older ages. And with those, you need someone to be able to perhaps step in and manage things on your behalf. And you can do that under the trust umbrella without having to go through the court, guardianship, conservatorship, which can be time-consuming and expensive.
Now, should everybody consider trust, or is there an income level that you should consider?
Well, in the past, when the tax planning was driving factor, it used to be based on the federal estate tax exemption levels. Well, those are set at $11.4 million per person now. So we're seeing fewer and fewer of those. And if you have that issue, perhaps it's a nice problem to have. But really, it depends on the particular circumstances. As I kind of mentioned briefly, there can be a wide variety of reasons why you may want to consider a trust. So unique facts and circumstances, it just all depends. I'm personally of the mindset that you don't necessarily need a trust in every case, but I think it can be helpful depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
So as you get older and you've been diagnosed with, say, Parkinson's or something like that, and you're going to be living for a while, it might be advisable to rename or retitle your assets in that trust so that someone can take care of them without having to go to the courts, getting a power of attorney and all of that kind of thing. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And generally, you would have a general durable power of attorney or financial power of attorney working with the trust, but you can manage a lot of things under the trust umbrella. So if you are facing those issues, it's helpful for family members, spouses to step in and be able to do that for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that it captures long-term care planning for Medicaid, which is an entirely different matter, and there's some specialized trusts for that, but exactly.
And what about the irrevocable trust?
Well, irrevocable trust, we used to see a lot more with the tax planning. We do still see some of those, perhaps with some of the Medicaid long-term care planning, and perhaps with asset protection issues. So it just depends. I mean, you can still do some things. I've seen the dynasty trusts, which are intended for multi-generational asset transfers and being able to pass those along and making sure that there are restrictions in place for future generations.
For example, if you have a piece of property, a heritage ranch or something, put that in the trust, and then you have limits on that heritage ranch for future generations so that it will stay in the family.
Perhaps that could work. I would say, as any attorney, there are caveats with that. Obviously, is how you fund that particular assets for cost, maintenance, and things like that. But that could be one example, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today and telling us all about trust. And if you want to know more about trust, contact Charles at mbssllp.com. I'm Deborah Uroda for It's Your Money.